Hey YouTube, my setup is halfway done. I still have to get like all my desk tchotchkes in place before it's 100%. But I wanted to talk about Thor Ragnarok, and well, this was my first day off since I went and saw it. This gave everybody plenty of time to hit it either over the weekend or on a weekday for those of us like me who don't get weekends off. Uh, so the short version is, did I like it? Yes, just like practically everybody else, apparently. There is a small caveat to that, which is, it tried really hard to distance itself from the other Thor movies a little bit. And for anybody who liked the previous two Thor movies, like myself, that was a little bit like, hey, come on, guys, come on. Thor the Dark World wasn't a fantastic movie, but I would maintain that it's still one of the best looking Marvel movies. Of course, Doctor Strange is up there too, and Thor Ragnarok at least equaled, if not beat it out. I'd say probably beat it out. Some of that's personal taste, which, I mean, I did really enjoy the more comic booky look of Thor Ragnarok. I got a real kick out of that. I'm going to have to pick up the art book for this, not least of all because of who apparently almost showed up in the movie but didn't. And there's undoubtedly art of Beta Ray Bill in that art book, and I need that. So let's talk more like in depth about things. And I mentioned a little bit how it sort of, tried to distance itself from the other Thor movies. By the way, I'm not wearing a turtleneck because I'm pretentious. I'm wearing it because I'm cold. Because it's winter, and right now I'm keeping my apartment a little chilly until some things sort themselves out. So, in terms of like how there is no arc between the three Thor movies. There isn't. It's kind of sad. Uh, I suppose Cap kind of gets just in increasingly desperate shenanigans with his man crush with Bucky over the three movies. Tony's kind of all over the place in the Iron Man movies, but that's just how we do. Yeah, that's in terms of the three. Yeah, nobody's really got an arc in their individual movie trilogy. Uh, but I am glad that Ragnarok is the best Thor movie because the first Iron Man movie is the best Iron Man movie. The second Captain America movie is the best Captain America movie. Shut up. Civil War was good. It was fun to watch, but it wasn't a better Captain America story than Winter Soldier, and it wasn't a better Avengers movie than Age of Ultron. I'm sticking to that. But by all means, offer your dissenting opinion in the comments below. So I've always liked that idea of the first Iron Man is the best, the second Cap is the best, and the third Thor is the best. And I feel like it creates a good abridged watching order, particularly with how the movies interact with each other, where you watch Iron Man 1, Avengers 1. You watch Captain America 2, Avengers 2. Now you watch Thor Ragnarok, and then right into Infinity War, because it chains right into that. Which I didn't mention spoilers on this, but yeah, there's gonna be spoilers. We're gonna dig into some stuff. Uh, and again, I also mentioned like a cosplayer's perspective in the description, and we're gonna get a little bit of that because that is always on my mind when it comes to Thor movies, and there's a lot to think about cosplay wise in this one. Yeah, I need to chain back to talking about this as an arc for Thor, because I think if anything, like trying to think of Thor as a character in this one, because they make him really kind of different than he's been in the previous movies, and they mention like at the beginning of the movie that he's been out traveling the universe looking for Infinity Stones. So he's kind of been rambling about, and I think Thor starts out really sheltered, being the prince on Asgard and all that. And the Avengers kind of helped shake him out of that. And this galaxy roaming, or whatever you want to call that, was probably the last nail in the coffin for that, where he's rambled about and he's a little bit more mellow. Um, Now, I don't know how the new sassy Thor is going to mesh with the unadulterated sass that is Iron Man and the. No, Cap's still pretty much the straight man. But there's plenty. Like, I know nobody liked Thor by himself as, the stoic straight guy, but in a team dynamic with the Avengers, there's enough people cracking jokes where Thor can kind of be more serious. Um, and I miss Natalie Portman. I do. I'm sorry she was not utilized in Thor: The Dark World. Why am I apologizing? I wish she had been utilized better in Thor: The Dark World. It was certainly better than the first Thor movie, but still not necessarily good enough. I like how they left that a little ambiguous, though. Um, so yeah, I kind of talked about how I wanted it to, how I think it'll fit with the broader cinematic universe, and I know we're all kind of sick about talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but when you talk about these movies, it crops up. Um, yeah, and I think I've mentioned this in other videos where not only do I think Thor: The Dark World gets a hard time, I think Age of Ultron, the second Avengers movie, gets a hard time. And with things about Joss Whedon recently, I'm sure that's only gotten worse. But I liked Age of Ultron quite a bit. Not as much as the first Avengers movie, absolutely, but I think Age of Ultron was really good, and it was as good as it could be, being smack dab in the middle of this huge, like, trilogy of trilogies that are the collective Avengers movies. And I think people will look back at it as kind of the like the soul of the trilogy a little bit, where the movie starts, and you've got the Avengers taking out a Hydra base, and dropping that they've been doing this for a while, and they're cohesive, they're working together, and you see them in the party later, and they're buddies, um, and those scenes make you buy into that. You are on board with these people as a team and as friends, and you didn't have that at the end of the first Avengers movie. You had the shawarma scene where they're all kind of sitting together and they don't quite know how to deal with each other. So I think, once we watch everything play out, Age of Ultron will fit in that slot a little bit better than it does as a standalone movie. It's like Star Wars Episode 7, where I mean, it was not a bad movie by itself, and it was fun to watch, but yeah, it really kind of was just going to be, it was saying, here's where Star Wars is at right now. Now let's do something interesting with Episode 8. And yeah, I'm going to have to get in and talk about that too when that comes out. And it's leading right into Infinity War, uh, where there was that footage from the Disney Expo earlier this year, whatever, that I caught some shaky cam footage of that showed Thor in a new costume, and that costume shows up at the very end of this movie, barring one very spoilery thing they did, that they edited, that I'm glad they kept that under wraps. I was glad that kind of came out of nowhere. Uh, I said there would be spoilers. I don't know why I'm dancing around that, but yeah, no, I'm not going to say exactly what I'm talking about. No, that's about the end of that chain. As for individual characters, there's a bit to talk about, and they don't talk about it in the movie. They kind of gloss over it, like the whole Sakaar is subject to this like time dilation thing, where Loki gets knocked out of the Rainbow Bridge like 30 seconds early, and he ends up on Sakaar like a week before Thor shows up. Uh, the Hulk had been missing for 2 years. So that same time dilation effect would have had Thor on Sakaar being a gladiator for a really long time, like a really long time. Unless those rules aren't consistent, and time and space and science fiction, you could make that justification. But I kind of like that idea of that's part of why the Hulk has become so intelligent and has kind of become so dominant is he got to stay as the Hulk for that long. It wasn't just for 2 years, it was some crazy, crazy time. Which I think, Banner's arc was a little understated in this, but there's some really good stuff there where he's like, nope, I have to be okay with maybe never not being the Hulk again to save people. It's not a bad arc for him. Uh, Valkyrie was interesting. Valkyrie was super cool. Uh, I don't actually have a ton to say about that, and that seems, I don't know, that seems unfair to not have anything to say about a really well executed female character, but that's basically what she was. I like the costume design both for her Valkyrie suit and her just kind of hanging around Sakaar outfit. Uh, and again, for cosplayers, I totally want to see some of that this summer during conventions. I want to see some Valkyries tooling around. I also want to see Scourge. I want to see guys dressed as Scourge, and I feel like the go-to prop for your Scourge costume isn't going to be the fake guns because, well, how cons are going with guns anyway. No, you bring the shake weight. That is what people will be on board with. Uh, yeah, and okay, so here's where we get to some interesting speculation, because Sif was entirely absent from this, of course, because her actress had other obligations. But where we get into, theory crafting for future Thor movies or future MCU stuff, particularly where it fits in with Beta Ray Bill, because that's what all this is coming back to for me. That's what like watching the movie was for me, was looking out for that head on the totem pole and seeing if I could spot him in a crowd anywhere. Was looking for my boy Beta Ray Bill, and Sif hung out with Bill for a long time in the comics, out rambling around the galaxy. So that's where she could be. That'd be a real interesting angle for them to put on that. Um, as opposed to them just killing off the Warriors 3, which is like, it's another part of that. Yeah, we know nobody cares about these characters, so we're either A, going to kill them off so you don't have to worry about them anymore, or B, just in case you do care about these characters, we're going to kill them off to see if we can get some feels out of you. So I was just like, come on. I mean, yeah, no, it's it unimmersed me from the movie for a little bit, thinking about the decision making there. But Hella was cool. Hella was cool, and especially just the superpower of I have all the knives. I make knives, nothing but knives. And for cosplay, man, I'm not going to envy somebody figuring out the precise geometry of what angles everything on that headpiece is on. That is going to be a trick. Not impossible. I'm sure there's diagrams somewhere. But yeah, just the angles of like where everything is going to sit in relation to itself, so it doesn't look weird. And they're going to have to make a knife setup where it's like, oh, I've got like 3 knives hanging on like some kind of solid plastic thing, so they're in a really satisfying arc, or fishing wire. Now there's going to be all kinds of cool stuff with that. And Heimdall, rocking the dreadlocks, just kind of hanging out with the giant sword. Because he did have the one badass scene in Thor: The Dark World, but it was kind of undercut by his helmet. You could just tell. They just did not film. They could not film that in any way that didn't make that helmet awkward. Oh, who else is there to talk about? I mean, there's not a whole lot. I've mentioned everything there basically is to talk about with Bill on this, because that's something I had to watch and I had to think about in terms of projects I'm working on, where there will probably be a design of him in the art book somewhere. He might show back up with Sif. I'm hoping. I can't remember if I mentioned my hopes for a fourth Thor movie where you've got a female Thor and you've got Beta Ray Bill kind of competing for the hammer. And then they both get hammers, or they both get half of whatever's left of Mjolnir. Yeah, that is assuming Mjolnir stays broken, which it did at the end of the movie, of course. But that's the other theory I have regarding where Thor ends this movie at, and Infinity War, is I feel like this movie was kind of the counterpoint to Civil War in terms of they wanted to start Infinity War where the Avengers, the chips are down, the team's broken up with from Civil War. You know, nobody's on the same page with each other, and one of their heaviest hitters lost his heavy hitting stick, his hammer, in Ragnarok. Now, that is undercut a little bit by the whole, oh, the lightning was inside you the whole time thing. But were I a betting man, I'd still bet at some point in Infinity War 1 or whatever they call Part 2, Thor gets his hammer back. And since the hammer like clearly causes him to, you know, get Thor's costume, that could totally bring back the cape and bring back the long hair, which is, I mean, let's face it, it's Thor's iconic look. His Ragnarok costume that I've seen people on the RPF going nuts over for the last few weeks was only in the movie for one scene, for his like armored gladiator costume, and it's a sick costume. It's sweet. There's no question with that. But I have finally come down on the side, you know, of whether or not do I want to build that, do I want to make that, do I want to wear that? The answer is nah. I think I'm good being an Age of Ultron / The Dark World Thor cosplayer. I have successfully pigeonholed myself. Yeah. So I should have plotted this out a little bit more thoroughly. I think that's everything I really wanted to talk about. Oh, I wanted to cycle back to some more Beta Ray Bill stuff because I love Beta Ray Bill, and I'm not the only one. And people wanted to see him in this, and they said they didn't put him in because they didn't do him justice, and that's cool. That's fine, but I would have been fine with just a walk by in a crowd. I was looking out for it. But when you think about where the Asgardians ended up at the end of this movie, they're in a ship floating through space because their homeworld got destroyed by Surtur, which is exactly where the Corbinites were at, with Beta Ray Bill watching out for him at, you know, when Bill first showed up in the comics. And that parallel was super interesting to me when I thought about it. And I also, I'm not entirely convinced Hela is dead. There's a very reasonable chance, but it would be interesting considering they kind of gave her the same origin story as Angela in the comics, where she's the oldest daughter. She's the secret oldest daughter of Odin and his wife, whose name changes from version to version. And there's this nice dichotomy with all of Odin's kids of they're either super good or they're a freaking villain. Maybe Hela becomes Angela. That'd be kind of interesting. Like she floats off through space and has to make some decisions. Has to examine herself. It's an interesting thought. Probably not though. Yeah, I think that's most of what I wanted to talk about. Again, really liked the movie, really just loved it visually. It's a good time. I would classify it as one of the most rewatchable Marvel movies, just in terms of being, you know, fun to turn on. Avengers is still probably number one when it comes to that, but I think I'd list Thor as 2, maybe 3 behind Guardians. I'm not sure where I'd fit Guardians 2 on that. I don't know. But yeah, such petty rankings are beneath us, right? This isn't that kind of channel. But thanks for watching the video, guys. I will be working on more craft projects soon. I'm still working on getting my workshop set up. My workshop, in some pretty massive finger quotes. And I will have some Thor or Beta Ray Bill or Overwatch stuff to show you hopefully soon. But things have been weird. So I'll see you guys there.